Life sometimes come at you fast. Tragedies make your life unravel. You feel like you wanna give up and stay knocked down. Even when your heart is shattered, you still got a life to live. You still got a life to live, so don't give up. We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles. We are beautiful miracles, so don't give up.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, My Beautiful Tragedy. My name is Carrie Schmidt. And if you like what you're hearing, I would so much appreciate if you would subscribe, like, comment, and share. In today's episode, I will be speaking with Tracy and Jamie, the owners of Music Therapy St. Louis. And so I would love to have you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more about your music therapy as well as your company.
Sure, I'll go first.
Okay.
My name is Tracy SanHeinrich, one of the co-owners of Music Therapy St. Louis. Happy to be here with you.
Thank you.
I have been a music therapist for almost 14 years, and going back, I can just share a smidge tidbit about my personal story. Grew up with a grandmother who lived in a nursing home almost my entire childhood. Did music for a long time with my father in the nursing home, helping the geriatric population, and I think inadvertently was doing some sort of music therapy at the time, which inspired me to follow this career. Wasn't originally going into music therapy. I was actually going into speech pathology, and just decided I missed doing music and missed music and how it helps people. So kind of stumbled across the field of music therapy, and here we are 14 years later.
Awesome.
I used to have a private practice on the Illinois side, and then stumbled into Jamie over here, and we started working together with a program called Maryville University's Kids Rock Cancer. She came on the team in 2017, and we decided to build a company together. So here we are.
Awesome. What about you, Jamie?
And I'm Jamie Kennington. Thanks so much for having us. So I have a kind of a unique story. So for 10 years, I did a completely different career. I was in marketing for 10 years.
Wow.
And I didn't think that music therapy was actually a thing. So one of my friends was doing it, and I asked more about it and heard about the program over at Maryville University, and I figured out kind of how to cash it all in. So I completely downsized, sold my house, went back to school, two degrees, and 10 years later, I now am doing master's in music therapy and met Tracie along the way. And when I came to Maryville, I fell in love with Kids Rock Cancer, and I thought, there's no way they're going to have an opening for that program. And they had already had two therapists, and then just kind of stars aligned, and Tracy and I are cut from the same cloth, I would say, and just hit it off, and then came together with the company and the merge of the company, and here we are.
That's awesome. One of the things that's really important to me is to share about different types of children's therapy that are available. And I know that music therapy does not just apply to children. So can you kind of share a little bit about, the different, places that you do it, and just more about it, because my focus is definitely children and grieving children, but I know that there's a lot of people who would be very interested to know in the other ways that it can help.
So, yeah, there's so many different areas. And so we teach also, we were just talking to students, asking what populations they want to go into or what they want to do, because it looks so different based on who you're working with. There's never a client that is the same. At the company, we work with birth to end of life. So I have specifically worked with individuals of varying abilities. So I've done work with St. Louis ARC, adults. We've done the creative music making program. So it's a community outreach program that involves the St. Louis Symphony, St. Louis ARC, and Maryville students. And then also children that have varying abilities or trauma-informed care if they need that mental health support. And then all the way through adulthood, which then I'm going to lean over to Tracie to kind of address that geriatric support.
So on the adult end, we work with behavioral health and mental health, but also stroke survivors. I specifically direct a stroke support choir that's affiliated with the ABC Brigade, which is a nonprofit organization that supports survivors of stroke. So we do a lot of neurologic music therapy application, so certain specific interventions that are used for survivors of stroke. I also work on the geriatric side with dementia and Alzheimer's, and also hospice and end-of-life care. And then that intertwines also with the grief and bereavement programming that we have.
Wow. So I have a degree in psychology, so I'm very into that part of it. Like, you know, how does it affect, you know, your brain and, you know, different things like that? Obviously, music affects a certain part of your brain. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think historically society has thought that music always just affects one part of your brain. It actually affects all parts of your brain simultaneously.
Wow.
So as we further more into the research and the science behind what music can do for your brain and your body, it has multiple lasting effects of when you apply music to a certain situation using a music therapy intervention applied by a board-certified music therapist. You can create opportunities for healing, for recovery, specifically with mental health or physical rehabilitation as well. Jamie always describes it as the
Highway 40.
Yeah, Highway 40. When Highway 40s broke down, you know,
Yeah, when
I'll
it
let
was
you
shut
explain it.
down, everyone had to find a different side road to get to their destination. I just remember everyone complaining and just how do we get past, you know, how do we get past Highway 40? But everyone finds a side road, so that's essentially what's happening. That main neural pathway is either damaged, or we're trying to find another pathway to get to the destination. And then once it's gravel and we've paved over it and we've established it, you can eventually begin to fade out music therapy.
Wow.
And that's where it's like you know your shortcut to work, or you know your shortcut to your destination, or whatever that may be.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I actually, you know, I have a little bit of my own experience with music therapy. When Jackson was in the hospital, I asked them to come and play some music for him, and I will never forget that lady. I will never forget, you know, she asked me what were his favorite songs, and you know, we watched on the monitor how his levels would come down when the music was playing, and you know, obviously things didn't go the way that we would have wished, but it just left such an impact on me. And then, you know, we had heard about Kids Rock Cancer, and Ivan did the Therapeutic songwriting, and so I would like for you to share a little bit about that and just kind of how, you know, how that really can help a child also.
How did we get connected again? I don't even remember. How was that?
Well, I think it was just because I had reached out to you, you know, to work with us with our foundation.
Oh,
was
right.
an
And then
email.
I said, that's right.
Because
It was
Yes.
an email. And then
Yeah.
I said, wait, if he's a sibling of
Yes.
a child with cancer, then he qualifies for to participate in Kids Rock Cancer.
Right.
That's right.
Yes.
So you know, we just got, I think you and I just hit it off right away, and I was able to come work with Ivan at your home, and truly just kind of getting back to the goals of therapeutic songwriting is it's an opportunity for self-expression. Obviously, when a child is dealing with, whether they're dealing with cancer or whether they're a sibling of a cancer patient, they're dealing with a vast variety of traumas, and whether that's loss of autonomy, things, they're losing their independence, their choice, their control, and then their world is changing drastically around them. So in your case, Ivan's world changed very rapidly. So it was an opportunity to give Ivan this really beautiful space, and luckily we were able to do it in your own home, to give him this kind of beautiful space with music to create something really special, and that was his. You know, I think that was the coolest thing about Ivan's song is he was 5 at the time? 4. Yeah, okay, I couldn't remember. But, you know, it gave him an opportunity to just sort of express, be silly, but have those serious moments within the session, because what I've always said from day one, Kids Rock Cancer has been around since 2009, and I've worked with so many kids, so many different ages, and every story is different. But it gave him a chance to just be. There's no expectations within therapeutic songwriting. It's about the process and not the product.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of people think that, oh, you know, here comes the music lady and we're going to have fun or whatever. And yes, we do have fun in the process, but you're taking something and you're applying music to something that is sad. You know, the reality of the situation is sad, is that Ivan lost his brother, and what does he do with this grief? And giving him an opportunity, whether it's with music or art, for him to be able to express what he's been going through without having to do traditional talk therapy, or even when, like you said, a 4-year-old maybe doesn't have the words to explain what he's feeling. But can play music or have an interaction that can help him process his grief.
Right. Well, we're going to go ahead and share that song now, so you guys get to hear that. Okay, so, I guess what I saw with that too was that Ivan got to have control of something, and, he had no control over what happened, and he still has no control over what happens. And, being able to see him kind of make his own decisions, and, and then he really was real proud of it too, and it's something that they get to keep. And, music has such a super special place in my heart. It is something that I very much bonded with Jackson over, and very much still do with Ivan. But, it's funny, I can be, I don't know, even at just the store, my ear automatically tunes into that overhead music. And, there's a specific song, Sweet Child of Mine, that is just such a huge song for us. And it's like, I feel like I hear it all the time. I'm like, this is like a 30-year-old song,
Yeah.
But, for me, that's just like a little sign from Jackson. And so, when I was first being introduced to what you guys do, we had a situation with someone who they took them to their family counselor. And, because not everybody really specializes in grieving children, the therapist's solution was to have him committed. And he was a 7-year-old child. And obviously that was not the best option. So, we introduced music therapy, and it just was such a better, choice for him. So, I didn't get to see any of the therapy sessions. So I'm just kind of curious, like what does a typical session look like?
So it just depends. I think I think especially with grief, we always go into a clinical assessment, and it's where a music therapist comes in with probably a bag full of instruments. And when you do a client intake, you're asking the family what kind of songs they like or what kind of music are they interested in, so you can at least be able to build rapport. But most importantly, a clinical assessment is not just about assessing the client's needs or abilities, but rather a chance to build rapport with a child. And using music is an easy way to do that because it is familiar and it's safe, and helps a child feel really comfortable with a therapist. So again, kind of like outside of that traditional talk therapy, really you're just two people sitting down to play some music together and figuring out how a child communicates and navigates through that process. But a music therapy session can be an array of things. It can be interactive music making. It can be therapeutic songwriting. It can be active music listening, where maybe you're analyzing music and just talking about music that you listen to.
Improvisation.
Improvisation. And you can really communicate with a child on going back and forth with instruments and again, giving them that control, reinstating the control, and letting them know that they can have power over their environment in a safe place, in a safe environment, and controlled as well.
I love that. That's awesome. All right. So can you give me share some stories about how you've helped people with music therapy?
Where to start?
You want any stories specifically?
No, I mean, because I just love what you guys do, and I know that you just have the ability to help so many different people. So
How about we provide some a variety of different clients?
Yeah, you go first.
Should I go first?
Yeah, you go first. Let me think of something
Okay.
while you're talking.
So I'm thinking of someone who is a stroke survivor and who had not independently spoken a word for, at that time, 2 years. And the neurologist had requested or written a script for music therapy. So it came back to us, and we got to work with him. And again, what Tracy said, every situation is so unique. So my first couple sessions was getting to know the type of music this person liked and gravitated towards. And it was Peter, Paul, and Mary, Puff the Magic Dragon. So different songs that this person identified emotionally with. And the family was just interested to see where music therapy would take it. And after so many sessions, we were getting this individual to independently, with the cue of music, to say, hello, how are you, and goodbye, good to see you. And one day we called one of the family members on a speakerphone, and that family member said, "Oh, it's the first time I've heard your voice in years."
Gosh, wow.
And that
Wonderful.
just, because I think in that moment, it's like we're just doing the best we can for that person. Our interests are always is what is making this client comfortable, what is making this client thrive. And you don't realize, I think in that moment, what an impact you're having. And it's just, those are the moments that time just stands still and you just sit in that moment and just watch that family, how it has changed their life. That was the first one I thought of.
Wow.
That was a good one.
That is a good one.
Well, and she's right. It's not just about the client. I mean, what music therapy and creative arts therapies can do for the family, as we've talked about before, Carrie, can be so encompassing and supportive in that process of, just kind of coming from my pediatric oncology background. I can speak to so many, patients and families that I've worked with over the years, and some, luckily, on my end, kids that I've been able to see for a long period of time. Unfortunately, due to a relapse or multiple hospital admissions over a long period of stays. But on the flip side of that is that, the hospitals are so generous to allow us to come in and provide services free of charge through the Kids Rock Cancer Program. And that has given us so much joy and capability to be able to provide support for these families for a long period of time. So I can speak to many situations where there's a period of time to where I have a lump of kids that are all diagnosed at the same time, and then all of a sudden it feels like about 3 years or 5 years later, a lot of those same kids relapse. And it's an unfortunate statistic, but at the same time, I feel privileged to be in the program for a long period of time to be able to support those families through what they're going through, because the first diagnosis is very different and the relapse is very different. But giving them the opportunity to participate in a therapeutic songwriting session specifically has given patients hope and has given families hope and has given them an opportunity to really see inside the child. I can speak to one situation that I had where a 12-year-old diagnosed with cancer. I saw him a couple weeks after, and man, he was just mad, mad at the world. And I go in to do a session with him, and his mom, grieving in her own way and dealing with it, didn't want him to write a pissed off song. She wanted him to write, well, that's not very nice. So, you need to say something nice in your song or whatever. And although I support her grieving process, it's important to advocate for both the patient and the family. And he just needed to feel what he was feeling. So his song was angry, and not all of these songs are happy and sound like fun. But at the end of the day, this is where they are now. And I think music therapy can meet a client or a patient in their journey, wherever they are, and help them express whatever they need to. Because then after that session was over, he wasn't in a bad mood anymore.
Wow.
It kind of gave him the gateway to be okay with where he was, and it gave him permission to feel the anger that he was feeling.
Right.
But he wasn't punching a bag. He wasn't throwing a baseball through a window. He was creating music and using that anger and channeling it into something really positive.
Right.
So then at the end of that, not only was it a great experience for him and his expression, but we could have open communication with mom and son now about, this was okay for him to feel this way. It's okay for him to be mad about what he's going through.
Right.
And it's okay for you to feel uncomfortable with it. So there was just, not only is that process great for the patient, but that's another way of how it could be so beneficial for the family, just to have those open lines of communication.
Right. Yeah, I definitely notice with Ivan, he gets pretty anxious, and I can tell when he's got kind of thoughts pinging around his head. He now worries that Mike and I are going to die, and that's a very real fear for him. And so because I don't always feel that I'm always equipped to help him through those issues, I take him to see his play therapist, and a lot of times she can help him process that, because if he can get it out, then it's not going to be bouncing around in his head as much and just taking over his thoughts. And, 18 of the 24 months since Jackson has died have been during a pandemic. And, that has just complicated everything and brought anxiety up so much for kids. And, I just wondered if you could kind of speak on that a little bit about how all of this has changed for you guys. I think you do most of your therapy in people's homes. Is that correct?
Most of it, yeah.
Right. But also, I just know that kids are more anxious now. So how does music therapy help with that?
I think with the pandemic, where we've seen vast amounts of isolation, not just for adults, but kids too. And then you have adults that are anxious. Then you have children that are anxious all in one household. It's just a lot to be. I mean, we're beings that are meant to be with other beings, and so isolation can be so detrimental for a child or an adult's mental health. I think that we've seen so much change, and with the company, we had to adapt very quickly. And it was like, oh crap, just like, everybody had to adapt very quickly if you wanted to survive. And what we found was that silver lining is that COVID had given us a push to do telehealth, a reason to do telehealth, a reason to support patients and families inside their home, but via telehealth if they had access to that. It's not the same, and it has its pros and it has its cons, but at least we were able to reach people that maybe we weren't able to reach before.
Right.
So especially we do some trauma-informed care work with an organization called the Angel Band Project, where we work with survivors of sexual assault and intimate partner violence, and we're doing groups all over the state of Missouri. And that was never the case before because no one ever really thought about it. So again, the silver lining of COVID allowed us to kind of push us into places, push us into the unknown.
Sure.
But also support individuals and groups that had never received support before.
I definitely feel that in-person is the best option, but virtual is better than nothing. We definitely felt that with our support group. So you're very busy ladies. You guys are into lots of different things. And so one of the things that I really want to talk about and share is the importance of self-care. So how do you guys take care of yourself?
We have each other.
Oh, that's all you need, huh? What do you like to do besides music therapy?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I play in a band, so I play on the weekends. It's kind of my little release.
I love this question.
There we go. I'm done. That's self-care.
No, it's so interesting because we're in such an interesting time with the buzzword of self-care. And, as we teach students now, and, I've been in the field for 14 years. Jamie's also been in the professional world for 20 years. Like, it's been interesting to see how things have changed. And then you add the pandemic on that, you add other societal expectations on top of that. We are in the United States where it's like work, mm-hmm. How do we take care of ourselves? Man, apparently we need to drink more water. we talk a lot.
Well, maybe you need to work on your self-care.
Yeah. And I think it's something that, I think that's probably the most important thing is I can speak from when I first started doing this kind of work. I first started my career in hospice and then went into, 2 years later, went into pediatric oncology. And I thank God I had that prep from the hospice work because I would have never been able to do the work I do now if I didn't have that first. But I also think that my self-care then was probably a little dysfunctional, being right out of college and then now having 2 children and being farther into my career. Self-care, I think the most important thing is that it's ever-changing.
Right.
For me, we get asked this as therapists, I think, all the time. Mm-hmm. I think music therapists have a different form of self-care. For me specifically, I have always said I'm the lucky one. Our patients go through so much trauma. Our families have so much sadness. And we get asked the question, like, how do you deal with all this sadness? Your patients die, your families are sad, you're dealing with sick children. How do you go home at night and put a smile on your face? And I just have always felt, and I don't know if it was just the way I was raised or the sort of kind of resilience I had to watching a ailing grandmother in the nursing home. But my patients and my clients give me energy. And I don't know if that's a good thing necessarily or a bad thing when it comes to self-care, because I've always been able to throw myself into work because it's always given me so much. It's how I feed my soul.
Right.
Because if I can, like you, say, if I can help one person, it's like my whole day, changes my whole life.
It sounds to me like, I know for me, like with my surrogacy, I felt that I was called to do it. And even all the work that I've been doing, I can question it a lot, but I'm like, no, I think that I was called to do this. And when you're helping people to the level that you guys are, it probably is a little bit of a calling, don't you think?
Well, that's, I think, where because when I worked before, it was somebody else's perfect job. And so even if it was an 8-hour day, it felt like a 15-hour day. And we'll work some pretty long hours. And like Tracie said, it's there's times where we just call each other. It's like, oh, I'm so glad I just had that group, or
right,
and there's like the sad days too, where I honestly wasn't joking when I said we had each other, because there are days where I've gone to the hospital where we've had a couple of our patients relapse, or families are going through hard times, or they're in the hospital and we can't have access to them, and I've just called up Tracie, like, I can't be there today, like I just can't be there for them today, like I couldn't access them, and then it was just hard for me. I'm like, this is my day that I just need to not be there. I need to have my own grief so I can be present like the next day, or calling her to kind of process that, and being able and allowing ourselves to process it, because it's not normal, and and being okay and having each other to go through that, and allowing our employees to come to us and process that as well. I think anyone that kind of skips along and doesn't stop for a minute to just have that moment and process what's going on is a big deal.
Right.
Yeah, and I can say with our work with Kids Rock Cancer too, we've had undeniable support for a very long time from the very beginning, and great leadership. And the support is always there. And if we needed anything, it was always there to help us process whatever we've been going through, because it's inevitable. When the program first started, when I came on board to kind of just design the therapeutic layout of how we envisioned the program being, it was like there was a hard conversation of like, we are going to lose kids. Like, you're going to lose patients no matter what. It's inevitable. So I think it's been helpful for me over the years also to draw boundaries with my own grief, and to continue practicing my own self-awareness. And just like Jamie said, we have each other, and luckily we have a team of great therapists, and that's kind of how we ended up designing our company, is because we really wanted to have that support system for other therapists, as opposed to just being kind of lone contractors, which was the world that we came from previously. Like, when you lose a patient, you're just kind of there by yourself. So it's really important to have great supervision, great peer leaders, and friends and family too, I think, are always helpful.
Well, and what was I going to say? Hold on. With music, you guys, like, obviously you're, doing therapy, but I'm sure that music is helping you also, right? I mean, while you're playing the music, I can't think of a lot of other therapies where you can benefit from it too.
Yeah, physically,
you know what I mean?
and emotionally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about just working with adults and groups of varying abilities, going in, having doing an evening session, and I've been tired from the day, and going in and doing stretching and breathing with the group, and we're doing sing-alongs, and I'm like, oh, oxygen's getting through the body, and that interaction, it revives me versus the opposite. So it has been a therapeutic experience for me.
Right.
I'll have to, coming out of those groups, that's when it's like, oh, I'm so glad we did that group.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can relate. I have a hospice patient that I've been seeing for almost a year, and I see him every week, and I call him my recharge, because I could see him on my worst day, but I'm the only thing that, he's isolated at home, and he cannot get out of his chair alone. He can't walk alone. There's so much loss of autonomy, and significant lack of just meaningful social interaction. So to be able to spend an hour with him every week, giving to him also gives back to me.
Right.
If that makes any sense at all, without crossing any therapist/client boundaries, it's important for us, our philosophy has always been about working in the here and now. And when I can provide an hour of solace for this client, or meaningful interaction, whether it's just singing and giving him opportunities for choice to pick a song that he wants, or we're doing music-assisted life review and talking about how I've been working on the railroad reminds him of the trains that he used to watch when he was a kid, So it's giving him that purpose. If it makes any sense at all, gives me purpose back.
Right.
So I think as odd as that may sound, our clients give us that
I was
energy.
gonna say also, just because we're such a connected world, like my phone goes away, like I don't have my phone out. It's just like I'm so in the here and now,
Right.
and you feel just this separation and this pause that happens,
Right.
and that is also just. We don't feel that all the time, especially when you're working. How many emails are you getting? How many texts? And the urgency to respond and everything. It doesn't matter. Like I can come out and have 10 missed calls and 200 emails. I'm like, okay, it's just that moment. You just wouldn't trade it for anything. And just being able to pause everything and be there in that here and now. Going back to your here and now comment, it's so important.
But don't kid yourself. I do get in the car and scream Alanis Morissette every once in a while.
And I scream
Gotta do what
more.
you gotta do. So, if someone who is not listening locally would want to find a music therapist, because obviously we want to reach people here, but we know that we're going to be reaching people outside of the area too. So, how would they find a music therapist? Is there a website or something?
Yeah, so you can look for a music therapist 2 different ways. So you can reach out to the national organization, which is the American Music Therapy Association. I think it's musictherapy.org.
You got it?
Right? Mm-hmm. And you can go to the Find a Therapist page, and you can also look up, which is the cbmt.org website, which is the Certified Board for Music Therapists, which is basically a catalog of certified music therapists. I think it's important to talk about the difference between volunteers that do music and also board-certified music therapists. As we're talking about these important topics like grief and bereavement, like sometimes music can evoke emotions that you don't expect. And it's important to have a qualified professional to be able to assist a patient in processing what those emotions are. And that's part of what a music therapist does, part of their training. So you can go to either one of those websites to find a music therapist in whatever city or town you're located in.
Awesome. So what are the plans for music therapy St. Louis, the future plans? You don't have to tell me everything unless there's any secrets.
All the juicy details.
We're just so honored to have you working with Love Like Jackson, and we're really wanting to grow and be able to provide the services to as many children as we can. So I'd love to hear what you guys have in store.
I'll let you go there.
We very much support creative therapies and as collective and collaborative as possible. So that's kind of direction that we're thinking, just this collaboration with other creative therapies. It's just if one child or one adult or one individual, if music's not their thing, maybe art is, so I'm being open to that and working as a team, because the more we work as a team, the more we can reach people. So that is something that is kind of like a bigger idea for us. We, at Music Therapy St. Louis, we had 3 main goals, and that was to be the best resource for the area for music therapy information, or to refer, just to go to ask questions about music therapy. The second one was to be the best place for employees to work, because we're the only company that has employees, that has benefits and payroll and things like that. Wow. So that was very important for us, because I came from corporate world, so it was having a corporate support system without being corporate, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then the best quality services, because we can offer supervision and have a team approach. So with that said, there's other bigger dreams of having our own clinic space and things like that. And then we have our 5-year and 10-year plan, if you want to comment on anything.
You got it. I was just going to say, we really do hope to have brick and mortar at some point. It's not always feasible for families or clients to have services in their own home. Mm-hmm. So to be respectful of that, we want to be able to provide a really home feeling space, that's comfortable and exciting and I don't know, just a really creative place for them to feel free in, and it not feel like traditional therapy. But to add to Jamie's collaborative thought is we love just collaboration. We continue to grow, watching other professionals And we grow from our employees that are new to the field. We grow from the students from teaching at Maryville. It's just this opportunity for us to just keep growing as professionals and individuals, and then provide those services and apply them to services for clients.
That's awesome. Well, I'm sure you guys will achieve that. Every podcast I'm going to end with saying that we're all just walking each other home. That's my little saying, and I'm just so honored to be able to do this with you guys and watch you guys and to see you guys help children whose siblings have died. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.